Sir. Hello everybody, my name is Frodo Baggins, and I'm here to welcome y'all to Toastmasters today, especially you guests. Great to have you. I'm from the Shire, and we're very welcome to our guests. We usually have high carbohydrate snacks. It's second dinner time for us. So, welcome everybody, welcome to Toastmasters, the mission of our club. The mission of a Toastmasters club is to provide a mutually supportive and positive learning environment in which every member has the opportunity to develop oral communication and leadership skills, which in turn foster self-confidence and personal growth. It's our mission to do the best to provide you all with those tools. We're glad to have you guys here, especially our guest, which I happen to know already, but please stand up and introduce yourself to those who do not know you.
I'm Patrick Sidious-Nam. I live in town and I work at university. So nice to be here.
Great. Great to have you, Patrick. Thank you.
Patrick, how did you hear about
Will told me
Right.
that he's giving a speech today, so I'm here to sort of hear that.
I will.
My name is Pam Burns. I'm Will's wife. He's a longtime member here. I live here in town and work here in town, and decided to come see his speech tonight.
Very well.
Nice. Well done, everybody. Thanks for bringing us. We got the spectators here. We're ready to go. It's awesome. Okay, first of all, generic detail. Be sure that for those of you who are role players, fill in your role so you're getting credit with this leadership form right here to make sure that you're getting your credit, and so is our club. In general, the theme will be introduced by our honored Toastmaster, Louis Denbaum. Give a warm welcome.
Good evening, everyone. In case you haven't figured it out, tonight is Halloween. That's why our president looks so scared. And the theme of tonight's meeting is Facing Fears, Halloween and Otherwise. The quote from Emma Donahue is, "Scared is what you're feeling. Brave is what you're doing." First order of business. Everyone carries one of these around these days. It's hard to find someone who doesn't have one on them. And I would ask you all to turn your cell phones off as a courtesy to all the people speaking tonight. Thank you very much. The first order of business is to introduce our role players. First is Jean Symington Craig, our timer. Jean, why don't you tell us about your role?
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I will be timing various segments of the meeting this evening, and I'll describe my role. The first section will be our prepared speeches. Prepared speeches, we have 2 speeches today. Both are 5 to 7 minutes. The green light will go on at 5 minutes. The yellow light will go on at 6 minutes, and the red light will go on at 7 minutes. They will have 30 seconds to complete their speeches. I'll also be timing our evaluators. Our evaluators are 2 to 3 minute speeches. The green light will be turned on at 2 minutes. The yellow light will be turned on at 2 minutes 30 seconds. And the red light will be turned on at 3 minutes. And then there are 30 additional seconds before you're disqualified. I'll also be timing table topics. Table topics are 1 to 2 minute speeches, impromptu speeches. I will turn on the green at 1 minute, the yellow at 1.5 minutes, and the red light at 2 minutes, and then you have 30 seconds to finish. I will be giving a report at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. have Art Atkinson, who is our grammarian for the evening. Art, tell us about your role tonight.
My role has two parts. One is to listen to language used by the members speaking this evening and to make note of exceptionally good, or if there were any bad use of language, English or otherwise. I will give a brief report at the end of the meeting on that, and the other part of my role is to have selected the word of the evening, which I have selected, and to make note of who uses it. So this evening our theme is fear and overcoming fear. The word of the evening is intrepid, an adjective, meaning fearless and adventurous. There's in most uses, a little bit of a playful quality to the use of intrepid. And a sentence using it: the intrepid trick-or-treater knocked loudly on the door of the abandoned house. I'll give a brief report at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Art. And Dennis, will you be our art counter tonight?
Yes, I would
Thank
love
you.
to.
Please tell us about your role.
As odd counter, I will be counting how many odds, you knows, buts, this and that, Xerox, anything that's a filler word, I'm going to count and I'm going to call you out for it at the end of the meeting and send a report. Thank you.
Thank you. Emery Styron is our general evaluator. We'll hear from him at the second half of the meeting, which he will lead. He's also our joke master. And now I'd like to call up Dennis Gomez, who will read the objectives for Will Burns. Dennis.
Tonight I am pleased to have Will Burns as a speaker. His speech is titled, "The Best in Science Fiction Cinema is Yet to Come," as you can see in the projection. Will Burns loves stories. As a young boy, he devoured science fiction and fantasy books with gusto. As a teenager, he embarked on his one-man crusade to watch every DVD in the Fairfield Public Library's collection. He didn't quite succeed, but having watched countless B movies gave him an appreciation of the elements of storytelling used in films and the process of filmmaking. These days, when Will gets a DVD of a beloved series or movie, the first thing he does is watch it again. The second thing he does is watch it with the cast and crew commentary on, since the nuts and bolts of filmmaking is riveting to Will as well. Today, Will is talking about how great we have it as a science fiction and cinema lovers, and how it's about to get even better. Ladies and gentlemen, the best science fiction cinema is yet to come. Please welcome Will Burns.
What is science fiction? Unlike fantasy, which is the constructed mythos that we all share, talking about dragons and sorcery and whatnot, or the creation of a content creator that draws his own mythology. This could be like the Force and the Jedi-Sith dichotomy in Star Wars, or the elves, orcs, and hobbits in Lord of the Rings. Science fiction is concerned about science and technology. Sometimes the technology far beyond where we are today, but technology that could potentially exist in our universe. Things like faster than light travel, android workers, and colonies on Mars. But just because the settings for science fiction are amazing and outer-worldly doesn't mean that their emotional impact can't strike close to home. I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched sea beams glitter in the dark near Tannhauser Gate. All those moments in time, lost, like tears in rain. Time to die. Science fiction, it holds up a mirror to ourselves. And through that mirror, we see our aspirations for the future, our ideals and our hopes for the best in it, and our fears about how that can be twisted against us. Some examples of classic science fiction are the utopian idealism of Star Trek, the dystopian breakdown of empathy and humanity in Blade Runner, and the transformative quality of discovery and the isolating experience of exploration in 2001: Space Odyssey. Right now, we are in the midst of a science fiction renaissance. Raise your hand if you've seen these movies. The Arrival, okay? The Edge of Tomorrow, also known as Live, Fight, Die, Repeat. Shocking, okay. And The Martian. Who's seen The Martian? Okay. These movies are keeping that torch alive. However, there's a problem. The cost of film, it's amazing that these films were made at all, to be quite honest, because the cost of filmmaking over the decades has been going up. And the number of theater participants and attendees has been going down. Many people are deciding they'd rather stay home, watch Netflix, watch Game of Thrones, and not deal with rising ticket prices and overpriced popcorn. So the studio wants to have big wins. They want films that already have a preconceived story or a base audience that will pull them in. That's why Hollywood loves superhero movies and loves sequels. Even better if it's a superhero sequel. That's like the best. It makes their investment in this risky endeavor just a little bit safer. But unfortunately, this has the quality of choking creativity and innovation. Case in point, Blade Runner 2049. I loved Blade Runner 2049. This was a gorgeous, slow-burning film that probably about half the audience in here would hate. It had a beautiful score by Hans Zimmer and cinematography showcasing both the claustrophobia of humanity pressed down on itself in some scenes, and the vastness of space and of our own isolation in others. But this movie was long, and it was a very cerebral movie. So I was not too surprised that it didn't do well at the box office. It was unfortunate. But when I heard that, I just had a moment of fear, a moment of sadness, when I realized that maybe this movie would die alone in the dark with no one to follow it, nobody to see it, to remember it again. But all is not lost. Thanks to the effects of special effects pioneers, the heavy use of CGI in film today, and computing power going up as the computing costs go down, the cost of doing CGI is going down, way down. So much so that potentially the sequel to Avatar or another film in the Blade Runner universe could be made outside of Hollywood. Perhaps in Iowa. This is not as outlandish as you might imagine. In the 1970s, a lot of independent filmmakers were able to find success outside of Hollywood. Some of them parlayed that into success with the studios like George Lucas, who was able to make many creative ventures and lots of money, or somebody like David Lynch, who has managed to remain mostly unfettered from the major studios up till today. So I would say that while there's been a number of great movies in the past, and that there's been a number of good movies coming out today, that the second golden age of science fiction will soon be science fact. Thank you.
You will. Madam Timer, please give us 2 minutes so we all can take 2 minutes to evaluate Will's speech. We are back. I'd like to call upon Dan Craig, who will read the objectives for Fraser Jones. Dan Craig.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, viewers at home. Fraser is also doing project number 8, get comfortable with visual aids. I'm going to read the objectives for his project. First, it is to select visual aids that are appropriate for your message and the audience. And second, use visual aids correctly with ease and confidence. He's going to speak for 5 to 7 minutes. Fraser Jones hails from the village of Marigot on the island of Dominica. He was an avid do-it-yourself electronic enthusiast. He takes a keen interest in other do-it-yourselfers and feels compelled to tell you tonight about John Magiro. Tonight his topic is John Magiro, a remarkable man. Please welcome Fraser Jones.
John Magiro is a remarkable man. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow members, guests, and viewers at home. Here's why I think John Magiro is remarkable. John grew up with his mother in Murunga County in rural Kenya. The area is hilly, and as you see, it's crisscrossed with lots of rivers and valleys and waterfalls. The area has no electricity. You can see from this World Bank chart that 2014 in Kenya, 35% of the population, only 35% of the population has electricity. John's family used kerosene lamp. In grade 4, the smoke from the lamp would irritate his eyes and his lungs. In addition, he saw his mother was struggling and often could not afford the oil for the lamp. He resolved that he would come up with a better, cheaper, and cleaner lighting solution, and at the same time make things easier for his mother. He missed a lot of school because his mother could not afford the school fees. He spent his time experimenting and thinking of solutions to the problem. throughout elementary school, he experimented. He ran wires from his home to the river, where he set up a bicycle dynamo, which would be turned by the river, and he ran wires to his house. But when he went back home, there was no light. Everything he tried in elementary school days, nothing worked out. The villagers made fun of him and called him names. His breakthrough came when he went to high school. In high school, he was introduced to basic electricity and realized the reason why he had no success so far. The dynamo was not powerful enough to overcome the electrical resistance of the wire to his home. He immediately decided to start on a new hydro project. He raised $60 from his mother and from selling goats and rabbits he reared at home. He then purchased an old chaff cutter part to use as his turbine, an old bicycle rim for the pulley to drive the generator. For poles, he cut down some old trees from his mother's compound and used thin galvanized steel wires to transmit power to the house. He used old plastic jerry cans as insulators. He even made special climbing shoes from old scrap iron to climb up the tall poles. He wired the house by himself. After 3 years, and now in fourth form, he was finally able to bring power to his mother's house. This was in Kenya Daily in October 2013. High school student produces hydropower. Here is John at his power plant. He went from zero to hero overnight. Neighbors came by to charge their cell phones, and they also wanted electricity at their homes. Today, John is lighting up Moranga. With his team. He has electrified over 360 homes to date, charging $2 a month per home. Kerosene would have cost $24 a month. John came up with a better, cheaper, and cleaner lighting solution, as he had resolved and is now implementing it. He is truly an intrepid entrepreneur. John Majiro is truly remarkable.
Toastmaster, please time 2 minutes. All right, we're back. Madam Timer, can you please tell us which of our 2 speakers qualified?
Both of our speakers qualified, Will
Oh.
and Craig.
Okay, so club members and guests, please vote for the best speaker, Will or Craig. It's time for the evaluation portion of our meeting. I'd like to call upon Emery Siren to lead us, our general evaluator.
Thank you, Toastmaster. Good evening, guests, fellow Toastmasters, and viewers at home. I'd like to call up our first evaluator, Dennis Gomez. Thank you.
Thank you. Fellow Toastmasters, viewers at home, honored guests, great to have you, especially to see Will's speech, especially Will. Very well done on your speech. First of all, I'd like to say your arm movements, considering that it's topic 5 for having a great type of hand gestures and then your body speaks, your arm movements were great because 2 examples very clearly were when you said twisted and then you said choked and you really got the arms moving, and that was really good, brilliant way to describe actions going on in the movie themselves. Another part was the way that you enunciated dystopian very clearly in front of everybody. That was, again, just getting things going so everybody could see what you meant. You emphasized on certain words well, especially towards your introduction and body of your speech. One thing I would say for improvement during your introduction, especially, is certain words such as isolating. When you say that, try to slow down the rhythm a little bit. You're speaking quick about some more upbeat things, and then try to slow it down a little bit with words such as isolating. Well, another part I think was very good was your sense of humor relating to just the big picture overall of trends of people watching movies and how the population may be consuming in different ways. Such as when you're saying, okay, well, people may be less likely to go to a theater because there's overpriced popcorn they're charging for now. And that's also just showing everybody there's a bigger picture. You're not just talking about sci-fi movies, but you're also talking about the economic forces that drive it, naturally, is the consumer in the end. So I like that. And another thing about that, I would say, is that you had a projector. One improvement point, although this is a bit challenging considering your mouse is here, is try to see if you can put the mouse a little closer to the projector screen that you had displayed here. So that way, you're able to interact, maybe do several interactions with the screen. I think that was great the way you're describing up here, interactive with the audience. See if you can make a movement closer to the screen. Another thing that I think was excellent about your speech was you also made a point towards the end of the body of your speech on how we could get speeches locally made here in Iowa in the future, prospectively. And that gets a lot of us really excited. Wow, it could be right here in the Midwest. That's awesome. And after that, I think one other improvement possibly would be just when you're talking about Blade Runner, that's a really good example of a movie you may enjoy, and that sounds very interesting for all of us to watch. I want to watch it now. But I would say try to see if you can relate it a little bit more to a more popular movie such as Interstellar or such as The Martian. So that way people can relate it a little bit more. Otherwise, though, excellent speech because you made me want to watch all those films right up there. Now, the ones I haven't seen. So well done, Will. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that intrepid and energetic evaluation, Dennis. And our next evaluator is Dan Craig to evaluate Frazier. Mr. General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, and especially Frazier. Frazier was doing a topic in which he was supposed to get comfortable with visual aids, and he succeeded very well. He told us a very well-organized story about a young man, John Mjiro, in Kenya, who faced a problem. And through his intrepid refusal to give up, finally, after years, came up with just a beautiful solution. And he's, to this day, improving the lives of all the people around him with this wonderful invention. I'm going to refer to the manual to explain what we were trying to see in this project. It asks, were the visual aids appropriate for the speech and message? Did each visual aid help you understand and remember the speaker's point? Was each visual aid clearly visible? It was true in all of those cases. This was a good talk to use visual aids. They were clearly visible. They helped us understand the point. I thought particularly the slide of the boy reading by lamplight was very powerful. It's the one you left up the longest, but it was the best illustration of the problem. You could just feel that kerosene burning your eyes, and it was easy to understand how that was expensive too, difficult to afford. The other thing I liked about your slides was the fact that there was no tiny print, there was no cluster of information that we were frantically trying to read instead of listening to you. They were all very simple slides, and they fit nicely with the talk that you were giving. It asked, were the transparencies or visual aids well designed and easy to read? Definitely so. Did the speaker use visual aids smoothly and with confidence? Yes. And at this point, I'll mention that one thing I liked about your talk was that you gave us a well-organized speech in kind of a stately pace, I would say. You had pauses, you weren't hurried, you weren't rushing through. The only thing that I think marked down to be improved was in the point of body language. It asks if the message was reinforced with body language, and I didn't see any of that. So you could have perhaps just gestured to the slide or just used your natural gestures more to improve on that point. Finally, it asks, was the speech well rehearsed? Was the word choice effective? Yes, very much so. What do you like about the speech? I particularly like that you began your speech with the central point. John Mjiro is a remarkable man. You laid out the problem, you explained how he solved it. Very good job. Thanks.
And now, for the impromptu section of the meeting, I'd like to call up our table topics master, Leslie Hollis.
Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and guests. This is the part of the program where we have table topics. It allows people to exercise their ability to be successful with extemporaneous speaking. And we usually follow a theme. Tonight's theme was facing fears, Halloween or otherwise, and it's also an opportunity for our speakers to use our word of the day, which again is intrepid, meaning fearless or adventurous. The speeches are 1 to 2 minutes with a grace period of 30 seconds for people to gather their thoughts. So, do we have any? Jean? Hello, hello. So I have 1 to 7. Choose a number. 2. What is your earliest memory of being afraid of something? And tell us about it.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters, guests, and viewers at home. I definitely remember when fear entered my life. It was a fascination and horror at the same time. I was, I'm going to say, first grade, and I was learning to read, and I had gotten into the encyclopedias that my parents had, and I was in the S's for snakes. I so got into snakes. The coral snake, I knew the cottonmouth snake, I knew rattlesnakes, I knew cobras, I knew where they lived. I was just fascinated with snakes. And I became aware, in fact, convinced, that there were snakes under my bed. There were snakes under my bed. And the way my room worked was, here was the door, here was the light, and my bed was across the room. And my conclusion was that if I turned off the light and took a running leap and leaped onto my bed without getting near the bottom where the snakes could stick their heads out and get me, I would be safe. So every night going to bed was this adrenaline rush where I'd rush across and leap into my bed and land there. Okay. So I had the system all figured out. Then there was the day when I was walking. We had a little cat. I was walking. I thought I had given my bed enough room. I walked, and as I was just heading to the door, I felt the fangs bite into my ankle. And literally, at that early age, I'd had my whole life pass in front of my eyes. That was it. The snake had gotten me, and there it was. And then I looked down, and it was the kitten. It was incredible. It was incredible. So that is when I experienced fear. I have tried to be intrepid since then, but that's when it happened.
Thank you. Who's next? Bilbo.
Yes, it's Bilbo is my name now.
Okay, a number between 1 and 7 and not 2.
7.
Tell us about something that scared you in the moment, but you can laugh about it now.
Right, thank you. I have a very, very traumatic experience as a high school soccer player. It has nothing to do at all with Halloween, despite the fact that I'm dressed for it. We were at the soccer tournament. We were playing some good, decent teams, some friendly matches before our regular season started. And I was a freshman. I was a little guy. And there were, of course, I was playing varsity with a bunch of older guys that were cooler and more popular and knew more about everything than me. So I wanted to make a good impression, naturally, that I got on this team. And we were playing ball. We had our first game done. Now we go to lunch. We get our vegetable soup. We get our sandwiches, whatever people get. Well, it turned out I got something that was a little bit too high in fiber because we were having our pre-game little pep talk before our second match, and we were all just sitting, and I just got really relaxed, and then I realized, oh, I flatulated a bit, and then all of a sudden it was quite a loud one, enormous, and my coach had the intrepid question to ask, who did that? And I was deathly afraid at that time. I said, oh shoot, I just screwed it up completely as a little freshman. These guys are going to completely remember me just for this. And even though I had to just admit it, so I raised my hand, and there it was. I didn't feel good that moment. 5 minutes later, I was laughing, and the rest of my life later, I'm still laughing about it. And it turns out that I was right. They pretty much remember me for that moment as a freshman.
Okay, Art.
One is still up for grabs, right? Number one
Oh, if you'd like to, sure.
hasn't been.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, yes. One is
Okay,
available. Yes, one. Have you ever scared another person intentionally or unintentionally? And tell us about it.
Madam Table Topics Master, Toastmasters, guests, and viewers. I can't recall ever having intentionally scared anybody. But one of the previous questions that you asked reminded me of a time when a science fiction movie scared me so deeply that I had nightmares for weeks, if not months afterwards. I was in 7th grade, and The War of the Worlds came out. How many of you saw that original War of the Worlds film? The flying saucers had these long snake-like appendages that came out that had a giant green eye on the end of it. And there is a scene in the movie which is so intense. The thing has crashed into a house, and there's people trapped in the wreckage of the house. The protagonist and his lady friend are trapped in this house. And the saucer has basically landed on the house and crushed it, but this appendage comes out and it starts searching around through the wreckage to find these people. And the intensity of it got to me such that I had to get up and leave the theater. I couldn't take it. And my nightmares went on for months, and I spent time drawing these flying saucers and working out all of my fear of being taken over by an alien being. It was just the most frightening experience that I can recall a movie ever giving me. And now, actually, I can kind of laugh at it, but for a 7th grader, it was powerful stuff.
Will? Number between 1 and 7, not 1, not 2, or 7.
You pick.
Have you ever been afraid of a mythical creature or a character from a story? Tell us about it.
I started reading science fiction and fantasy from a very young age. This was something that my father did a lot and that I kind of took on, and I I loved reading. And it never really never really terrified me that much, anything I read about. Except there was one day, I was 12 years old, walking back from a day at the lake, and it struck me. I read all these fantasy books. I'd been on this long binge of reading all of them. And that was the day that I realized I was starting to grow up. And I was not going to grow up to be a fantasy hero. I wasn't going to slay dragons. I wasn't going to, storm castles. My life was destined to be mundane. And I cried. I felt terrible. But I got over it. I moved forward. I pursued a fairly interesting life, all told. And lo, I never did. There's always a part of me that kind of, I don't know. If I was sucked through time and space to some other dimension where there was giant lizards to ride and sort of, Viking gods to battle, I would probably happily be there, and I would do my best to charge into that. But the point is that today I realize that I have the chance to be the best person I can be, and that my life is not as mundane as I thought it was then, as a young 12-year-old, and that we all can actually be heroes in our own way. And in some ways, our battles are far more epic. The battles we have over depression, over self-doubt. These things are just as powerful as any monster and just as crippling. And my heart goes out to everybody who's battling them. And I salute them in defeating their demons. Thank you.
I think we have time for one more. Emery. What number would you like?
You pick.
Have you ever witnessed bravery or done something that someone has told you afterwards that you were brave for doing?
Thank you. Madam Table Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters, guests, and viewers, I have both witnessed bravery and I have been accused of bravery. Though, in retrospect, the things that someone may have praised my bravery for, I look back and think it might have actually been poor judgment on my part. In that case, I once had the bad judgment to hitchhike to Montana in the middle of winter. This was a Christmas break during college. And I remember being let out of one vehicle that I was hitchhiking with in South Dakota. And it was 14 degrees. And I waited a long time for that next ride. Some people said I was brave, but I think I was just foolish. But what I consider brave, what I have seen a few times, is when someone is walked on or offended and they don't just suffer in silence, but they look that person in the eye who has offended them and say, that's not right, or why did you do that, or why did you say that? And that's a quality I would like to develop better in myself.
which of our table topics
All
speakers
of our-
qualified?
All of our table topics speakers qualified. Emery, Will, Art, Dennis, Jean.
So now we'll vote for the best table topic speech. And I'd like to introduce our table topics evaluator, Louis Denbaum.
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. Club members, guests, and viewers at home. We had 5 wonderful table topics tonight. First of all, I want to talk about the 30-second period. All 5 of our speakers tonight used the 30 seconds. Art, you cut it a little short, but everybody actually stopped and composed themselves and thought about their table topic. Good job. Jean and Art and Emery greeted us, whereas Dennis and Will just jumped right in. Okay. It is a speech. Greet your audience. Jean talked about her fear of snakes. What I liked about her table topic is she showed us her room. She said that there was my bed. And there were definitely snakes underneath it. You could actually see what was going on. I have one real small point for you, Jean, for a suggestion. When you were walking, you were turned away from us and you're continuing to speak. You could walk and then turn and greet us. Dennis, great humorous speech about flatulence and soccer. It was a great story. It was humorous. I'd like to see you use your gestures more meaningfully. You know, you're using your hands, but they're not actually doing something, okay? Emphasizing something. You know. The other thing, and this is a theme for me tonight, you could have used something to show us, like, you know, I was on that soccer team, and you know, and kicked the ball or something like that to add a little drama to it. Art, good segue into something you wanted to talk about, the film The War of the Worlds. Fantastic vocabulary, great story. One thing that I would suggest is, again, I'm using this theme for everyone tonight, dramatize what you were doing. You could have said, I didn't want to look at the screen, you know. Put your hand over your eyes and show us what that would look like to not want to watch the movie. Will, talking about fantasy and the fact that you are not going to be a fantasy hero. I could just feel the sword going through my heart when you said that. It's like, I won't be a fantasy hero. For you, the dramatization I'd like to see you do is maybe show us fighting demons. I'm not going to fight demons. Give us something to do with gestures. Again, same thing with you. You're doing gestures, but they're just constantly accenting your words. They're not actually being meaningful. And last but not least, Emery. Story about bravery. Humorous. I love that. Brought out the humor. You're a great storyteller. The one small suggestion I have for you is you were addressing the table topics master for much of your talk, and to the exclusion of the rest of us. And again, dramatization, you know, I hitchhiked, yeah, something like that to bring home the point a little bit more. But overall, it was wonderful to see how intrepid you all were. Mr. General Evaluator.
Mr. Table Topics Evaluator. Ms. Timer, can you tell us which evaluators qualified?
We are really racking it up this evening. Once again, all of our evaluators qualified. And they were Dennis, Dan, and Louis.
Okay, so please vote for your best evaluator, including table topics evaluator. So now we'll go to our reports. Could we have the timers report?
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Our speakers prepared speeches. Will Burns was 6 minutes, 37 seconds. Fraser Jones was 6 minutes, 58 seconds. Our table topics, Dennis was 2 minutes, 57 seconds. Is that right? Maybe I have these upside. No, that's not. No.
They're swapped.
I swapped them. Okay, wait. So, back up. Table topics. Table topics, Jean, 2 minutes, 16 seconds. Dennis, 2 minutes and 6 seconds. Art, 2 minutes and 3 seconds. Will, 2 minutes and 19 seconds. And Emery, 1 minute and 47 seconds. Okay. Now we go to the evaluators. The evaluators, Dennis, 2 minutes, 57 seconds. Dan, 3 minutes and 28 seconds. And Lewis, I gave him an extra 30 seconds because we had so many people, 5. So he finished at 3 minutes and 44 seconds. That's my report.
Thank you. Art, could you please give us the grammarian's report?
Yes, sir. Tonight, intrepid was used once by Lewis, by Dennis, by Emery, by Fraser, and Dan. Each one used that once. Will's, pardon. Apparently, I missed one from Jean. My apologies. There are no brownie points being given out tonight. Will's very poetic tonight. A few of the phrases that caught my attention: overpriced popcorn, a gorgeous slow-burning film, and the fear that the film, another film, might die alone. And speaking in table topics, being sucked through time and space. You just were replete with these great phrases tonight. Very poetic language. Emery, the phrase being accused of bravery. Jean telling us that I felt the fangs. Fraser speaking of John Majiro as an intrepid entrepreneur. Those are my observations. That's my report.
And now for a all-counters report from Mr. Bilbo Comets.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. Today, either you guys have done well with reducing your filler words, or I have not been paying very good attention, and possibly a combination of both. Will Burns, I counted 1 and 1 pause from you.
So it's even, right?
Yeah, even. Fraser Jones, I counted just 2 ums from you. Dan Craig, I counted 1 pause from you. Jean Symington Craig, I counted 1 so from you. For our role players, for table topics master Leslie, I didn't count anything. It was clean. Lewis is our overall table topics evaluator. I didn't count anything. Clean. Myself, I had 2 ands. Art, I counted 1 and only. And for Emery, I counted 1 but. That's all.
Thank you. And now in my role as the joke master greeter, I have a Halloween quiz for you. So here we go. Why don't angry witches ride their brooms?
I did this one before.
Well, we'll call on someone. Okay, go ahead.
Well, it's because they're afraid they'll fly off the handle.
Right.
Oh, there we go, okay.
Okay, you'll have to keep quiet for the rest of the quiz.
All right, I'm quiet.
Who won the skeleton beauty contest? Oh, listen to her giggle. Anybody? The answer is nobody. Where do baby ghosts go during the day? Day scare centers? What's a monster's favorite play? Romeo and... Good. Juliet, yes. And one more. What kind of mistakes do spooks make?
What?
What do spooks call their mistakes? Yeah, boo-boos. Okay. Applause. All right, time for the general evaluator's comments. Comment first on introductions. I just happen to think they're very important. I think Will wrote for you, Dennis, a very long, involved introduction, and as an editor, I say edit. You need to squeeze that down and get the objectives and the speech project out there. If you gave those, I missed it, so I was disoriented during his speech and your evaluation as to what we were really trying to focus on. Dan, I thought you did a very good job with a very concise introduction that included reading the objectives. Okay, as far as the evaluations themselves, Dennis, you were very animated. You were very complimentary, as Fraser's speech was quite. No, you were. Will's speech was deserving of that, and you had many insightful observations on him. You did talk mainly to Will, and I think some of us might have felt a little left out as you were speaking to him. You had very specific suggestions, such as movement toward the screen and slow down on the word isolating. So my main suggestion for you is to talk to all of us and be sure to make it clear what you're evaluating so we know the criteria. Dan, lots of smiles every time you get up, which makes everybody feel good and at ease. You made some very thoughtful points on his slides. You pointed out his stately pace. You gave a specific suggestion on his body language. And it's really just a fine evaluation, and I can't tell you what you could have done any better. One comment about the slides. I thought it was a great example of teamwork. You both used the same projector. You used the same mouse. It went very smoothly working between you, and it was just easier on the audience the way that was done. One suggestion would be whoever would be the last speaker there, or maybe for both speakers, I don't think it happened to you, Will, but it did happen to Fraser, is get some assistant to shut off that projector at the end so we don't get that distracting slide showing the ports on the projector at the end. Kind of detracts a little. So that's my evaluation. Of the evaluators, I'd like to turn the meeting back over to our Toastmaster, Louis Denbow.
That's right, you didn't evaluate me.
I didn't. You did all scot-free. Louis did a darn good job with suggestions for everyone.
Are there more winner to Willett?
I gave you one. Fraser has
Yes.
one.
everybody. Great meeting. We are ready for the awards. The best table topics, Jean Symington Craig. Wait. Here you go. It's a ribbon, not a snake.
No, I know.
All right, our best evaluator, Dennis Gomez. Good job.
Thank
Here
you.
you go, sir. And our best speaker of the evening is Will Burns. And also, Fraser, we have your ribbon for Get Comfortable with Visual Aids, speech number 8. And now I'd like to turn the meeting over to our president, Dennis Gomez.
Thank you, everybody, for your participation and for your attendance as a guest, and for fellow members at home that will be looking later on. As a reminder, really quick, be sure for role players, have somebody fill out so you get credit for your role, and so does our club. Everything else, otherwise, I think that it was a straightforward meeting overall. Very well done, everybody. Is there any business anybody would like to bring up at this moment?
I have a question.
Yeah.
For our R-counter role,
Yeah.
what is the definition of pause?
Pause. I've usually had it defined it as when somebody paused. Like it was when it was a pause, long time between words, and it was when it wasn't quite flowing, in my opinion and interpretation. So it was a subjective type of pause. Yeah.
I have major input from Toastmasters International on the pause.
Okay.
Please share with
Could
us.
I?
Yeah.
Okay, this is so fortuitous.
Mm.
Okay, so, I'm just gonna shake your hand. Okay. This came up at the Conscious Communicators Club down in Fort Madison about pauses. And here on our counters report, we have decided, or we have been doing, not counting a pause, because a pause is it's preferable to putting in an or you know or you like. So a pause is something that is one step up in the evolution of a counter situation, so you're not putting in pause. However, and then the other kind of pause where you don't know what you're doing, so this would be a negative kind of pause. You haven't practiced, you're pausing and you're not clear on what your talk is. We have here in this club had the evaluator's job be the evaluator's responsibility to let the speaker know that you really didn't know your material, you need to practice it more so you don't have that really long pause. And then there's the golden pause, the gold standard, which is where you're using a pause to add emphasis. And it's actually by design, and it helps the audience assimilate. Okay. I was teaching this to the Fort Madison people literally in the last 3 months. And the one DTM that's there came up and said, showed to me in the Competent Communicator Manual where it's giving the roles, it talks about the odd counter counts the filler words and long pauses. So he was pointing out to me that I was incorrect in saying that pauses are off the table for the odd counter to count. Well, to me, I said, you know, this is the way we do it at our club in Fairfield, but I'm gonna call Toastmasters. So I got on a pretty long conversation with someone at Toastmasters, okay? Why are you laughing, Dan? Okay, I get passionate about this stuff. So I got on the phone with Toastmasters International, and they said that this woman, and we went back and forth, and she said, really, to cut to the chase, it's your club's policy. Because she said, if a pause is disrupting a certain flow or like that, then that could be something that a odd counter would put on their report. And I said, well, that's so subjective, because one person would be saying, well, I felt like you were creating a gap, and the other person would say, well, yes, you gave that pause and you created a gap on purpose. And so there was an emphasis there. And so this person I talked to agreed with me, said, yes, I can understand that. I said, and up to this point, the odd counter role has been strictly quantitative. You know, either you said it or you didn't, and you're getting marked, and it's like that. And now all of a sudden you're getting subjective. So the answer to the whole thing is that we can, as a club, decide how we want to handle pauses. It is there in the description of the odd counter in the Competent Communicator Manual. However, I think our club has evolved it in a superior way in terms of not counting pauses as a filler thing, because it's preferable to feeling rushed, not being able to give a pause. It gives emphasis, and I think a pause is an opportunity where you actually could have put in a filler word and you didn't, so you get kudos for that. All right. So, now Dan, my husband is laughing at me, and I do not know why. I do not know why. Is there something, is there like something sticking out of my hair, or what is it? Do I have hair? What's happening?
It's probably my hair.
Are you doing little things in back of me, Dennis? What are you doing back there? All right, well, anyway, that is the pause. So we can continue that discussion, but that is the full, and the woman said, I've never had this depth of a conversation about pauses. And she said, you brought up a lot of good points. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. President, I recommend you appoint a pause study committee task force to return a recommendation within 3 years.
I'd like to serve on that
Within
committee.
3 years, you guys, we need a bipartisan commission.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a task force. I expect it to be done by October 31st, 2020. Okay? That's a pretty short timeline for our politics nowadays. Okay. So actually as a clarification though on the other thing, the club policy, that's something we have to determine, you're saying, basically.
We just have to agree that how we're doing our pauses, if they're on the odd counter report or not, and what the criteria are for putting it on there.
Okay. If we do want to put it to a decision, we could vote on it next meeting or something like that if we want to. I think it's right now we don't have a concrete rules to whether we count it or not.
This club we have worked to specifically exclude it.
Okay.
From the odd counter report, because it's not an odd filler word.
So it would just be good to have, if it's going to be on the report, the definition of when you, as the odd counter, checked when the person had a pause.
Okay. I think to add to that too, one thing as a beginner is Xerox too. I think if we could, on the bottom say of the reports, we could write both exactly how you define, I think, pause, and then we can also do the same for Xerox, because for some newcomers like myself, and since I just started in January too, I think that'd be good to clarify for people in general. I think that's.
I don't know the difference between a Xerox and a false start, and we have those on there. To me, it's a double dribble, whether it happened at the front or it happened in the middle of a sentence. You started, you said something, and then you started and said it again.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so that would, I'd like to get that
I
clarified.
like that. Okay, it's been good conversation. Thanks for the question. Thanks for the feedback. I like it. Are there any other questions? Patrick, what do you think of the meeting?
It's great.
It was great. Nice. There we go. Got it. And I have a very, very serious announcement to make right now. There's something called high fructose corn syrup, and it's important that you have one for the holiday. So please take some. I was gonna give this to the best costume, but then I dressed up, so I'd be really arrogant to just give it all to myself. So anyway, please take some. This meeting is adjourned.